Exactly a long time back, a boat cruised out from Massachusetts and advanced almost to the mouth of the Mississippi stream. However, tragically, the breeze in the waters hauled it to the lower part of the Bay of Mexico. For quite a long time, that is where it lay pretty much overlooked. That is until current marine archaeologists chose to investigate. While the disaster area itself is intriguing, it was the character and destiny of the men on board that truly caught everybody's consideration. Specialists inspecting a wreck spot subtleties that completely expose the set of experiences books. But before we get subscribing to our channel is the best way to stay up to date on all the latest and greatest historical journeys content. It's like having a direct line to our channel. Let's get started. We start in Westport, Massachusetts, a town with a standing as a center of the whaling exchange. It's 1815, and the boat known as Industry is heading out interestingly. For a considerable length of time, it will cross the Atlantic, the Caribbean, the Bay of Mexico, and back looking for its prey. All that reached a conclusion on May 26, 1836, which was the day it vanished, and for quite a while, it seemed as though nobody could at any point see it once more. Then, at that point, destiny mediated, looking like an organization checking the seabed in the interest of a second firm, with an oil rent covering that part of the bay. It got a brief look at the disaster area in 2011 as it navigated the seabed. In any case, it would be one more 10 years before the Public Maritime and Climatic Organization, NOAA, at last investigated itself while dragging some new hardware through hellfire. Yet, all that holding up would be more than advantageous. Presently, a few wrecks are more renowned than others. We've likely completely known about the Titanic, regardless of whether just from the film. In the event that you've concentrated on the Tudors, you might have experienced references to the Mary Rose. That boat sank in 1545 and wasn't found until 1971. Be that as it may, presently it's a significant archaeological fortune. Wartime will in general variety wrecks, with the miserable destiny of the regular citizen liner Lusitania having an especially significant effect during the Second Great War. The America has its reasonable part of wrecks. The site of the U.S. Arizona has turned into a public notable milestone. In any case, few out of every odd boat has a name that reverberations all over the planet. The business sank off the Bay Coast, yet the way that well do you know the tales of the El Nuevo Constante in 1766, the El Catheter in 1784, the SS New York in 1846, are the SS Robert D. Lye and a 166 in 1942. The El Nuevo Constante and El Catheter were both Spanish. The first was a trader transport, and the second a brig stacked with silver. Both were trapped in tempests and keep going for quite a long time. The SS New York was likewise loaded down with treasure and the survivor of a typhoon. The German U-boat U-166 destroyed the SS Robert Healy during two preceding, being sunk itself by a U.S. Naval Force profundity charge. A large portion of these boats met their watery destiny because of terrible climate. However, there are likewise in excess of a couple of association and Confederate boats lying close to the sites of nationwide conflict fights. It's an excursion through history, seeing every one of the various kinds of vessels with their various plans and purposes. Every one is a window into an alternate time span, and nobody cherishes a wreck very like a marine paleologist. Life on the vast ocean is perilous and eccentric. Fires, awful climate, and the more uncommon dangers of treachery, robbery, or to be sure a blast of dried peas are dangers. Indeed, dried peas. The Augustus Moore was close to South Carolina in 1855 when its freight got wet, puffed up, and detonated so furiously that the boat's structure was blown open, and worldwide there are a ton of wrecks. The assembled countries has assessed multiple million exist around the world. Obviously, a few kinds of cruising are more hazardous than others. Just ask skipper Ahab Moby Dick might be a work of fiction. However, Herman Melville did a ton of investigation into the universe of whaling that incorporates the intrinsic gamble of somewhat little and delicate people seeking after Goliath, once-in-a-while ruthless creatures. To be sure, the nominal animal might have been roused by a genuine legendarily forceful whale called Macho Dick. People have most likely been hunting whales since before records started. There's proof that our whaling customs date back even to the Stone Age. In the meantime, the Inuit clans of North America have probably the most well-established whale hunting rehearses, one which they have supported into the current day, and the depressing, ungracious grounds around the icy whales can give everything from food and fuel to apparatuses produced using bone. Later, there would be spear firearms. Then, at that point, ropes could be utilized to forestall it getting away before lands made the killing blow. The body would then be towed back to the boat to have all its helpful parts stripped away. Ultimately, individuals would understand that whaling was consistently pushing the species towards termination, while vegetable oil and gas lights eliminated the requirement for fat as fuel. By the 20th 100 years, whaling was vanishing. Yet more remarkable weapons and bigger drifting handling stations empowered expanded proficiency. Whale oil became stylish once more, and it wasn't until the 1980s that a legitimate overall ban was settled upon. And after it's all said and done, not all nations joined. Anyway, the business had been cruising during whaling assumed greatness days. Somewhere in the range of 1815 and 1836, it had made 21 journeys looking for its prey. While most of whaling action occurred in the more extensive Atlantic, Pacific, and icy seas, there was as yet a critical degree of movement in the Bay of Mexico, where this boat carried out its specialty. As a matter of fact, as per a 2022 article in the Washington Post paper of the assessed 250,000 sperm whales killed by American sailors in the 18th and 19th hundreds of years, might be 1,200 died in the Bay of Mexico. The business was just 64 feet long, with the size and shape that Mary anticipate from boats of the time. This would be significant when the opportunity arrived for present-day specialists to recognize the disaster area. There was a lot of block to line to attempt work exceptional heaters where fat could be handled. It was likewise viewed as a flawed vessel in light of the absence of copper sheathing on the opening. Approximately 15 men roughed the business, and they worked for a boat developer by the name of Polk Youth. Solid Shape was biracial, being both dark and local American. His dad had been a liberated slave while his mom was a Wampanoag lady. 3D Shape was likewise an abolitionist, business visionary, and donor. So a really captivating individual by his own doing. The principal journey of the business had accompanied the directions: you won't get back to Westport without a full freight of oil, or until your arrangements are used, wishing you a pleasant and prosperous journey. Around 230 barrels of whale oil had been gathered on this excursion alone. However, such rewards didn't come without gambles. The inlet of Mexico is known for its southern gusts during springtime, when winds can blast to 70 miles each hour and head in a different path quickly. At the point when the tempest hit on May 26, 1836, it did as such with a rage. The two covers of the business were snapped into pieces. The opening tore open and the water thundered, and when it was finished, the vessel was resting 6,000 feet beneath the surface. For supposedly the sole time ever a whaling transport had soaked in the Bay of Mexico. The following thing anybody saw of the vessel, it wasn't even the business any longer. Rather, it was essentially assigned wreck number 15,563. That was the moniker allocated to it in 2011. What's more, Energy Organization had been conceded an oil rent for that piece of the bay, and a land information organization responsible for the overview had detected the boat. The NOAA conveyed a boat called the Aquinos Pilgrim. However, the genuine examination of the disaster area would be completed from a good ways. Dr. Delgado, his kindred pursuit researcher Michael Brennan, Anna Bone sea life scholar by the name of Scott Source. It watched their screens in interest as a remotely worked vehicle was moved around the disaster area. Dr. Delgado was still in his home in Maryland. It didn't take long to sort out that indeed, this was a whaling transport with a particular heater. Be that as it may, there was one more significant inquiry: what had befallen the group? There were no bodies among the destruction. They must be someplace more exploration which should be finished, which implied an outing toward the Westport Free Open Library. A curator by the name of Robin Winters went through months exploring with the assistance of another master called Jimbury Solery. Other than the overall area of the disaster area, all she knew was that the industry skipper was called Sal. However, Bors Alari in the long run found notice of Sal concerning another whaler, the Elizabeth. He figured out how to uncover an article from the Nantucket Enquirer and Mirror paper from 1836 that depicted the Elizabeth getting back to Westport on June 17. In addition to the fact that it accompanied a great take of 375 barrels of whale oil. However, it had likewise gotten a few additional travelers, Chief Sal and his men. By some unusual karma, the Elizabeth had been close to enough to the business when it foundered to protect its team. You may be breathing a murmur of help for those 15 daring men. Yet it's a considerably greater arrangement than you could naturally suspect. It worked out that it wasn't just Couve, the proprietor, who had both dark and local American lineage. His team mirrored the very sort of variety, and that was something risky in the before-the-war South. Envision assuming that the boat had gone down. However, its team had cleaned up in Louisiana or Mississippi. As Dr. Delgado clarified for the New York Times paper, in the event that the dark crew members had attempted to go aground, they would have been imprisoned under neighborhood regulations. Also, on the off chance that they couldn't pay for their keep while in jail, they would have been sold into subjugation. That is absolutely one justification for whaling boats to stay away from the Bay of Mexico. The second the team set foot in a southern state, they'd have been hoodlums under nearby regulations, known as sailor acts in view of their skin tone. Regardless of whether they'd figured out how to stay away from subjugation, they'd have been in a difficult situation. It was just a fortunate turn of events that another northern vessel thought that they are first. There were a couple of elements that had made the salvage conceivable. One was that the Elizabeth was nearby. However, one more was that the boat didn't go down upon the arrival of the tempest. Indeed, it was harmed unrecoverable. However, it didn't really sink right away. All that whale oil on board added lightness and saved the art on a superficial level for 8 additional days. 8 days and a little more than 70 miles. That was the last excursion of the business after its group had deserted transport. As a matter of fact, one more whaler in the space figured out how to come by sufficiently lengthy to guarantee the excess whale oil in addition to one anchor for itself. In the meantime, in the long run, all that tempest harm would mean the end for the catastrophe vessel. Its last resting spot would be close to Pascagoula, Mississippi. We don't have a full manifest of the industries team, notwithstanding realizing the chief's name was Sal. Others on board included Q's own child, William, who was a guide and solid-shaped child in regulation part and cook. No other person of color is remembered to have been on as many whaling journeys as Cook. In any case, these sorts of assorted teams by and large weren't surprising for the time. We just don't have the best records of them, meaning now and again it's not difficult to forget precisely the way in which huge dark and local American commitments have been all through American history. That is the reason finding the business is so extraordinary. Also, it appears it wasn't exactly who was ready that was eminent, yet what they addressed, both previously and today. One of Shape's relatives incidentally turns out to be the leader of the New Bedford Verifiable Society. Lee Blake saw that not in the least did QFF effectively look for a different team. However, he ensured that large number of individuals were paid similarly as per their shipboard position, which was plainly the direct inverse of what was happening amid the constrained work of the slave states. This isn't simply a boat, however, a window into a particular time in America's muddled past. Thanks for watching. If you want to see more videos like this, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss a thing.